Welcome back to the Explainer, everyone. Okay, I am so glad you clicked on this one today because we are going to completely stretch the limits of our imagination. I want you to picture an alien world, a world where sprawling cities are built without a single staircase and complex spaceships are constructed without a single hammer. Basically, I need you to just take everything you know about human engineering, opposable thumbs, levers, buttons, even fire, and completely discard it. We are looking at a fundamentally different path to the stars today.
Okay, let's dive into this. It is basically the ultimate evolutionary thought experiment, right? What happens if a highly advanced, intelligent civilization doesn't evolve from apes, but from cold-blooded, limbless reptiles? Seriously, how do you forge metal, write code, or build a spaceship without hands or combustion? Well, that is the profound mechanical puzzle of the Ophidians. They're an incredibly elegant society that just bypassed the brute force of mammalian evolution entirely.
So, Section 1. The Ophidian Awakening.
To really wrap our heads around their tech, we first have to understand their daily life. Let's meet Saveth. They're a brilliant engineer of the 7th clutch, living in the subterranean city of Athelvire. Now, Saveth's biology fundamentally changes their entire relationship with energy, and you can see that right from their morning routine. It doesn't start with a blaring alarm clock. It starts with a seismic reveille. It's this gentle, low-frequency vibration sent through the city's bedrock that physically rattles their lower jawbone to wake them up. When Saveth wakes up, their cold-blooded body temperature has dropped to a sluggish 20 degrees Celsius. Their thoughts are literally moving like cold honey. So to get going, Saveth slides onto a heliothermal well. It's essentially a floor battery heated by concentrated solar energy. As their ventral scales absorb the heat, they rapidly boot up. Once they hit that optimal 38 degrees Celsius operational threshold, bam, their brain fires at peak efficiency. They don't waste 80% of their daily calories running a constant internal furnace like we do.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Saveth actually perceives the room once they're awake. They don't just see the visual spectrum like you or me. Their deeply bifid or split tongue captures microscopic chemical traces from the air, feeding them into a Jacobson's organ to create this incredibly detailed 3D chemical map of the room. Meanwhile, thousands of receptors in their L'Oreal pits map a rich, shifting tapestry of infrared thermal data. They literally see heat. So a cold wall might look deep indigo, while a heated pipe looks like blinding liquid gold. And all of this is viewed through clear, fused scales that protect their eyes instead of actual eyelids. It's an absolute sensory powerhouse.
Moving on to Section 2, Engineering Without Hands.
All right, Saveth is charged up and ready to work on designing a spaceship. But here is the core mechanical problem, the absolute crux of this explainer. This civilization lacks the opposable thumb. No limbs, no shoulders, no digits. The contrast here is just stark. Human engineering is built on grabbing, twisting, and pounding physical tools, all powered by the explosive combustion of fire. Ophidian engineering is entirely different. Saveth uses a highly articulated spine of over 400 vertebrae and independent jaw walking to navigate a city made of smooth, interlocking tubes. At their workstation, they rest in a kinetic input basin. They execute these microscopic muscular ripples along their body to depress millions of piezoelectric pins to type. And for delicate programming, they use a lingual console. The split tips of their tongue release distinct chemical compounds to physically write code. A single organic molecule can represent an entire programming loop. That is just wild to think about.
But you're probably wondering, what about building delicate hardware? They don't have robotic arms, and they certainly don't use fire because open flames are terrifyingly dangerous to a limbless, highly heat-sensitive species. Instead, they rely on the industrial formicidae. The Ophidians literally genetically selected and domesticated leafcutter and weaver ants. Guided by incredibly precise, synthetic pheromones sprayed by the engineers, thousands of these ants act as living nanoassemblers. They carry microscopic droplets of ceramic adhesive to piece together the delicate nozzles of the spacecraft's electromagnetic ion spit drive. It is an absolutely beautiful symbiosis of snake and insect.
Which brings us to Section 3, the ectothermic astronaut. And this brilliantly illustrates the whole point. Saveth's current project is the Voidshedder 2, which is a prototype orbital spacecraft. As we shift our narrative to spaceflight, we realize that an ectothermic or cold-blooded biology isn't a limitation at all. It is actually a massive, universe-breaking cheat code. When you compare mammalian spaceflight to the Ophidians, humans need massive, fragile life support systems. We need constant heating, tons of oxygen, and continuous food supplies, just to keep our wasteful internal furnaces burning. The Ophidians? Their life support is practically minimal. During transit, they consume negligible oxygen and food, meaning their spacecraft can just be a tiny, stacked honeycomb of capsules rather than some massive, sprawling habitat.
And why is that? Because of this exact number right here, 4 degrees Celsius. To travel the incredibly long, dark distances to the outer planets, Ophidian astronauts do not need to stay awake or eat. They just drop their body temperature down to 4 degrees. In this state of profound dormancy, which is called brumation, their heartbeats may be once every few minutes. They literally just sleep away the voyage in a tiny capsule.
Okay, Section 4, Crisis in the Vacuum.
Now, dormancy is great, but only if you can wake up safely. And that brings us to the high-stakes vacuum chamber test for the Void Shedder 2. Saveth has chosen to pilot this test even though they are currently in their blue phase. Basically, their outer skin is shedding, which makes them partially blind. But for Saveth, that's just a minor operational variable. Their thermal and chemical senses are at absolute peak sensitivity right now. And the inside of this capsule is wild. It doesn't use a pilot seat or even breathable air. Saveth is suspended in a warm, highly oxygenated fluorocarbon liquid. This perfectly distributes G-forces to prevent their long body from being crushed during intense acceleration. They steer using myoelectric pickups, literally flying the ship by undulating and flexing specific muscle zones along their spine. They navigate menus with a lingual-led mouthpiece, and a thermal projector feeds a 3D landscape of the vacuum chamber directly into their heat-sensing pit organs using microlasers. It is essentially an aquatic ballet of orbital mechanics.
But then, disaster. A high-frequency emergency stutter vibrates through Savet's jawbone. Warning, thermal containment failure. A primary geothermal battery line suddenly ruptures. The brilliant amber heat map of their cabin rapidly starts turning into a creeping, deadly tide of dark blue. The fluorocarbon liquid's temperature just plummets. Savet's brain chemistry immediately begins to slow down. The thermal display blurs. If they fall asleep now in this freezing liquid, they'll enter a permanent cold-induced torpor. They will literally die right there in the vacuum chamber.
So the crucial point is, how do they fix it? Without external heaters, Saveth has to manually generate their own heat. They fall back on an ancient biological survival mechanism called shivering thermogenesis. By locking their jaw and violently, rhythmically grinding their massive axial muscle blocks together along their spine, the sheer friction and metabolism of stored glycogen actually starts generating internal heat. Saveth is quite literally grinding themselves back to life, forcing their core temperature up degree by degree just to thaw their freezing brain.
It is a thrilling, frantic sequence of events. First, Saveth shivers to raise their core temp, regaining just enough neural clarity for that thermal vision to snap back into focus. Second, they locate the microscopic leak using their infrared pits. It stands out like a brilliant, blinding jet of heat. Third, using the kinetic wrap around their midsection, they violently contract their muscles to command carbon nanotube robotic arms to descend from the ceiling. And finally, they align the arms and execute a precise lingual spark. They flick their tongue on the terminal to trigger a plasma arc, welding a self-healing patch right over the rupture. Boom, the leak is sealed. Warmth floods back into the cabin. They survive the test.
Finally, Section 5, Shedding Skin for the Stars.
So after the test, the extreme physical stress of all that shivering thermogenesis has severely accelerated Saveth's biological clock. The old cloudy skin from their blue phase is now totally dead and ready to be cast off. That leads us to the great desquamation chamber. Here, Saveth rubs against these textured silicone brushes, peeling the old skin back inside out almost like a glove. Emerging on the other side, their vision is completely restored to a breathtaking high-contrast masterpiece. But here is the real magic of their circular economy. That discarded cross-linked keratin skin, it is not thrown away. It gets harvested by automated tubes, dissolved, and then spun with carbon nanotubes to create the flexible, self-healing structural membranes of the actual spacecraft. Even their biological waste becomes the literal armor they use to explore the universe.
Let's move to and see how this builds into an incredible realization. Quote, they did not need to conquer the universe with brute force or explosive fire. They would slide into the cold void with quiet, fluid elegance. You see, the mammalian approach to the stars is loud, explosive, and honestly, terribly impatient. But the serpents? They had time. By perfectly synergizing their biology with their engineering, literally using insects for hands, chemical loops for code, and brumation for time travel, they outpaced our brute force methods with absolute grace.
Please like and subscribe.